The idea of creating a vaccine passport is getting a lot of mixed reactions. The White House COVID response team said they'd leave the decision up to the private sector. And now Governor Abbott is prohibiting state agencies from requiring the passport for Texans. The executive order bans any state entity receiving public funds to require documentation proving a person has received a shot. He also banned any political subdivision from doing the same. That would include school districts, city or state offices, or housing authorities, things like that. The governor said more than 12 million doses of the vaccine have been given out in Texas, and getting the vaccine is by choice, never by force.
Government should not require any Texan to show proof of vaccination and reveal private health information just to go about their daily lives.
Now, the governor's order also says if a private entity gets public funding, they can't require a passport either. The White House press secretary said yesterday the president does not support a program requiring Americans to carry a credential, nor does he support creating a vaccine database.